Barry Doyle. I'm a lawyer in Chicago. I'm here to talk to you today about 5 of the biggest myths in workers' compensation. The reason we call these things the myths is that these are things that people tend to believe are true about workers' comp, but just aren't the case. And the problem with the myths is that people make decisions on what they think is actually true, and it's just not, and it ends up costing people thousands of dollars over the life of their case and can cost them access to quality medical care. I believe knowledge is power, and the more information you have about what your rights are under workers' compensation, the better decisions you're going to make about how to handle your case in your life. It's your case, it's your life, it's your decision, but you should be armed with good information about how to go about making those decisions. This is important information. If you can hit like, hit share, spread this information around people in your network, other drivers you may know who may be able to use this kind of information. It certainly will help them. We're going to dive into the 5 myths about workers' compensation. Believing in these myths can cost you thousands of dollars over the life of your case, can cost you access to quality medical care, because they end up serving as the basis for basically bad decisions. If you're watching this, the odds are that you're a grown adult. You have the right to make decisions, good or bad, and I certainly respect those, but I also want to make sure that people have information to make good decisions that they're comfortable with and that are informed decisions. So let's dive into the 5 myths. The first of the myths is that there's some minimum number of days that you have to be employed by your employer to be covered by workers' compensation. That's something that's just not true. You're actually covered by workers' compensation and eligible to get workers' comp benefits for an on-the-job injury if you get hurt in your first day on the job. Now, if you get hurt on your first day at the job, it's one of these things that's going to set off red flags with the insurance company. They're going to be looking hard to see if you had some type of injury that you showed up with the first day on the job, and you're trying to pawn it off as being a work-related injury. And I have had people who have been hurt like literally their first day on the job, and it's been a miserable experience for them. But the fact of the matter is that if it's a legitimate work-related injury, you're going to be covered. There's no minimum days of coverage for it. It's not like health insurance where you have to be employed for 60 days before you're actually eligible to get benefits. You're covered the first day that you're on the job. Second myth that people come across is that you have to use doctors that are part of your health insurance network or part of your PPO or something like that. And that's not true either. When you're hurt on the job and you're covered by workers' compensation in Illinois, you have a right to choose your own doctors. In fact, you have a right to choose what we refer to in the business as you have 2 physician picks. And essentially what it is that if you see a primary care doctor, for example, and he refers you to an orthopedic surgeon, that counts as 1 pick because you've only picked 1 doctor. You've just followed the advice that you've been given. You follow the chain of referrals that have gone on, and it can go on and on and on and on as long as there is a chain that links back to that first doctor. Now, if you get to the end of that first chain and you start seeing a second doctor who's outside that chain, that's your second pick, and you only have 2 picks. But none of those doctors have to be part of your health insurance plan. None of those have to be part of your PPO or anything like that. You can pick whichever doctor you want, provided of course that they're willing to see you at the rates that they're paid by workers' comp insurance. One of the basic benefits that you get is that you get your medical expenses paid for. The thing is that those reimbursement rates to the doctor are set by law, and not every doctor is eager to accept those. But you do have a right to see whichever doctor it is that you want. The third myth that really affects how people handle workers' compensation cases is that there is a belief that you're not going to be covered by workers' comp if you have a previous accident or a pre-existing condition, and that's just not true. I mean, it makes cases more complicated if you had a previous injury or a pre-existing condition, and there are certain ways in which the issue of causation will have to be addressed much more carefully. And the truth of the matter is if you had an injury to the same part of the body before and have another work accident where you've been hurt again, this is the kind of case where you really do want to get legal help, but you're certainly not excluded from coverage for that. The fourth myth is, and this is kind of really an insidious one, because the myth is that the insurance company has to offer you a settlement at the end of your case. Now, there are 3 basic benefits that you're entitled to. One is 2/3 of your medical average weekly wage while you're off. The second one is payment of your medical expenses. And the last one would be a payment for permanent disability that's associated with the injury. Okay. Now, what happens a lot of times is that the insurance carriers will be very good to people. People, they recognize that people aren't, necessarily eager to file workers' compensation cases, so they'll be good about paying the benefits as they go through. They'll pay the temporary total disability, the 2/3 your average weekly wage while you're off. They'll pay your medical expenses, and then, the employee's thinking to themselves, well, things have gone so well, I really don't need to get a lawyer at all, and they wait for the insurance company to go ahead and offer them a settlement, and they don't. And they don't because they're waiting for the statute of limitations to run out. And a lot of times people are so trusting of what's happened to them so far that they wait and they wait and they wait, and next the statute of limitations is expired, and essentially by not asking for a settlement, by not pursuing that part of the case that they have a right to pursue, the driver has essentially shorted himself out of thousands of dollars of money. And they, when people talk about they got so much money in a workers' comp settlement, that's the part of the case that they're talking about. And depending on what you make and depending on how seriously you're hurt, this really can be a significant amount of money. For whatever reason, people operate under the belief that the insurance company has to offer you a settlement, and a lot of times they just won't, and they'll be kind of sitting on their hands waiting for the statute of limitations to run out. It won't offer you anything, and they can go ahead and close their file out and never pay you anything more than the TTD payments and the medical expenses. The fifth and final myth I want to talk about is that owner-operators are excluded from workers' compensation coverage in Illinois. Essentially, there's a decision from the Illinois Supreme Court that says owner-operators can be covered by workers' compensation, but it's an issue of fact that has to be determined by a trial court. Now, most often, people who are owner-operators have signed an independent contractor agreement saying that they are not employees of the company that they're driving for. But the law in Illinois is such that the courts look to the substance of the actual relationship as opposed to what people have agreed to call it. And, in point of fact, I mean, the way that most owner-operators work, they're essentially doing the work of people who are direct employees of the company. It's very hard to distinguish the difference that these owner-operators serve for the trucking company versus people who are their direct employees. And that's really the basis for why owner-operators may be covered as employees for workers' compensation in Illinois, even though they've signed this independent contractor agreement. Now, it's not something that's black and white and written in stone, and it's going to be a contested issue in just about every case. And whether or not you're going to be covered as a owner-operator is going to depend to some extent on the quality of the proof that you put on at the trial level. And that's why you need to get a good workers' compensation lawyer to come in and help you if you're an owner-operator and you're interested in pursuing a workers' compensation case. So those are the 5 myths. The first one is the myth regarding the minimum days of employment for coverage. You're covered the first day that you're on the job. Second one is that you don't need to see doctors who are inside your HMO network or your PPO network. You can see any doctor. The third one is that, yes, you are covered if you have a previous injury or pre-existing condition. Number 4 is that the insurance company is not required to offer you a settlement. A lot of times they'll just wait for the statute of limitations to run out. And the last one is that as an owner-operator, you may be covered by workers' compensation in Illinois for an on-the-job injury. That's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope this is good information. I really do believe knowledge is power, and that this kind of information will help drivers make good decisions about how to handle any kind of a situation that comes up for them. If you think this is helpful for either yourself or for people who please hit like, please hit share. Let's get this information out so that other drivers can have the benefit of it. If you need more information, you can visit my website. It's www.rightsofinjuredtruckers.com. You can also call our office at area code 312-263-1080. We're happy to provide whatever information we can. You can also download a book that I've written. It's called rightsofinjuredtruckers.com. It's available for free download off the website. You can also order a hard copy for yourself by simply filling in the contact form on the website. We're happy to provide this information. Anyway, have a fabulous weekend. Please like, please share this information if you think it's helpful. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.